Ladies and gentlemen, here's a speech titled, When God is About to Give You Something Big, written in the practical neuroscience-informed, structured, and inspiring style of Andrew Huberman, without mentioning him. The speech connects spirituality with the science of mindset, perception, and transformation. When something big is on the horizon, it rarely comes with immediate comfort. More often, it arrives through tension, uncertainty, and inner resistance, pressure in all its forms. Mental, emotional, physical, almost always shows up just before a significant breakthrough. This is not a coincidence. It's a pattern deeply rooted in both neuroscience and spiritual law. The moments when you feast, the weight squeezed, seems unbearable, are often the exact moments when your internal system is preparing to carry something greater. How do we? Think of how the body builds strength. When you lift weights, the muscle fibers tear slightly under pressure. It's uncomfortable. It might even hurt, but it's that very process, tearing under strain, that triggers a biological response for growth. The body repairs stronger than before, not in spite of the stress, but because of it. The same principle applies to personal transformation. The pressure you feel before a breakthrough is not a sign of failure. It's evidence of restructuring. Your brain interprets change as risk. When you're about to step into a new level of life, be it a new role, relationship, calling, or opportunity, your nervous system initially reacts as if you're under threat. It's designed to protect the status quo, but real growth requires that you override those signals, not recklessly, but consciously. You have to teach your body and brain that discomfort is not danger, and that pressure is not punishment. It's the preparation stage. It's your system being rewired to handle more capacity. What most people interpret as breakdown is often just the friction between the old self and the emerging self. That friction shows up as fatigue, brain fog, irritability, or sudden waves of self-doubt. Spiritually speaking, it may even feel like God is silent or distant. But silence is often how clarity is born. When you don't have access to your usual emotional rewards, your brain starts searching deeper. It's during those silent moments that your values crystallize, your priorities become sharper, and your vision refines itself. You're not lost. You're being stripped of what no longer fits. Pressure also distills focus. When things become uncomfortable, unnecessary distractions fall away. You start asking better questions. You reflect more. You notice what drains you versus what sustains you. In a sense, pressure is like fire. It burns away what's not essential. And when you emerge from it, you're lighter, clearer, more aligned. This is why so many people look back on their hardest seasons and say, I didn't like it, but I needed it. There's also a spiritual intelligence at play here. Pressure has a timing to it. It doesn't show up randomly. It arrives just when you're closest to the edge of change, when the old system can't carry you any further and the new one is not fully built. That in-between space is incredibly vulnerable. It's where doubt tries to creep in. It's where you might be tempted to give up or retreat to comfort. But if you can stay grounded in that place, if you can keep moving forward even when the outcome isn't clear, you cross a threshold, you become the kind of person who can hold the breakthrough, not just receive it. What's coming isn't small, and the pressure reflects that. You're being trained to handle more, not so that you can boast in it, but so you can steward it. Every delay, every closed door, every painful pause, it's not denial, it's development. You're not being punished. You're being trusted with something that requires depth, resilience, and strength. So when the pressure mounts, don't panic, don't mislabel it. Understand that something is being born in you, something big, and that bigness requires a new level of stability and presence. You may not feel ready, but you're being made ready. Every breath you take under pressure is building something invisible, yet unshakable. Stay the course. Breakthrough isn't on the other side of pressure. It's hidden inside it. And once you understand that, you stop resisting the pressure and start rising with it. One of the most misunderstood signs that you're on the verge of a major breakthrough is the feeling that your environment no longer fits. The people, places, habits, and conversations that once felt comfortable or even necessary begin to feel out of sync. What once energized you may now feel draining. What used to make sense suddenly feels foreign. This dissonance is not a signal that something is wrong. It's a clear indicator that growth is happening, and your internal reality is starting to outpace your external surroundings. When you're in a season of transition, your brain and nervous system begin to rewire. You're forming new patterns of thought, expanding your sense of purpose, and reaching for something greater than what your current environment can support. This creates friction. Internally, you're evolving. Externally, everything seems to be standing still. That misalignment can feel uncomfortable or even disorienting, but it's not a setback. It's part of the process. As you level up mentally and spiritually, you become more sensitive to what no longer aligns with your purpose. Certain friendships that were based on shared wounds, not shared growth, begin to lose their emotional pull. Conversations that revolve around complaining, gossip, or fear start to feel like noise. Routines that kept you grounded before now feel repetitive or limiting. This is your system signaling that you're outgrowing the current container. Just like a snake must shed its skin to continue growing, you're being called to shed environments that can no longer hold the magnitude of what's forming inside you. This misalignment often triggers confusion. You may wonder why you suddenly feel disconnected from people you once loved being around, or why familiar spaces now feel restrictive. But this isn't a failure of loyalty or stability. It's a sign of inner expansion. The energy you once matched with your environment no longer aligns because your frequency has changed. Your awareness has increased. You see more clearly. You want more deeply. And in that clarity, certain things lose their grip. It's tempting to interpret this phase as isolation or even punishment. But being pulled away from your old environment isn't about exile. It's about elevation. You're being repositioned. Sometimes growth requires you to step away from comfort so you can move toward clarity. You can't hear your next instruction when you're drowned in old noise. Distance brings perspective, and perspective is power. There's also a neurological explanation for this shift. Your brain relies on patterns to keep you feeling safe. As you reprogram your identity, those old patterns begin to feel foreign, even threatening. You're not just changing preferences, you're changing neural pathways, and your environment often reflects those pathways. When you upgrade your thinking, your surroundings either adapt with you or resist you. That tension is your signal to either lead change or leave what no longer serves. You may also notice that some people in your environment become uncomfortable with your growth. That's not a judgment of them. It's a reality of transformation. When you shift, it challenges the roles and dynamics that others have become accustomed to. People may try to pull you back, not because they're malicious, but because your evolution reminds them of their own stagnation. Your growth disrupts the unspoken agreement to stay the same. And if you're not careful, you'll shrink yourself to maintain that agreement. Growth is not betrayal. It's responsibility. What's most important during this season is to stay grounded in your why. Why are you changing? Why are you reaching? Why are you willing to feel out of place rather than stay where it's familiar? When you keep that purpose front and center, the discomfort of misalignment becomes easier to bear. It's no longer something to fix. It's something to move through. Eventually, a new environment will form around your new identity. The right people will appear. New habits will feel natural. New spaces will energize you instead of drain you. But that can't happen if you keep holding onto what's misaligned out of fear. Letting go isn't loss. It's space making. And in that space, the life that matches who you're becoming can finally begin to take shape. So if your environment feels off right now, if the places you used to love now feel too small, too loud, too dull, don't panic. Don't retreat. Recognize it for what it is. See confirmation. You're growing, you're moving, and your future is already making room for you, even if the present no longer does. Isolation can feel like abandonment. It can feel like silence, distance, or even punishment. But if you look deeper, it's none of those things. It's not rejection. It's refinement. When you enter a season of isolation, whether it's intentional or forced, it's usually because you're being prepared for something that cannot be built in noise, chaos, or crowd. Isolation isn't about separating you from everything you love. It's about creating the space necessary for transformation, clarity, and deep internal construction. Growth rarely happens in public. The kind of growth that rewires your identity, reshapes your vision, and recalibrates your values has to occur in silence. It needs stillness. It requires that you pull back from the external world to gain access to your internal one. In isolation, you're not just alone. You're being given the chance to listen without interruption. And it's often in that where the most important answers show up. Neuroscience tells us that solitude activates the brain's default mode network, the system that lights up when you're not focused on the external world, but instead engaged in reflection, imagination, or planning. It's in these moments that creativity is sparked, memories are processed, and deeper self-awareness forms. In other words, isolation creates the neurological conditions necessary for vision. When everything around you gets quiet, your inner voice gets louder. You begin to hear what really matters, what you've ignored, suppressed, or silenced under the noise of everyday life. Spiritually, isolation has always been a training ground. Throughout history, those destined for impact had to walk through seasons of solitude, not because they weren't ready to be seen, but because they needed to become someone worth seeing. You can't lead others until you've learned to lead yourself. And you can't hear the next step clearly when you're surrounded by too many opinions. In isolation, you are stripped of distractions. You no longer have access to external validation, so you learn to stand on internal conviction. That can be uncomfortable. When you're alone, old fears can resurface. Unresolved wounds rise to the surface. Without the usual distractions, so you're forced to confront yourself. But that confrontation is a gift. You can't heal what you don't face, and you can't face what you're constantly avoiding. Isolation creates the setting for deep inner work, the kind that strengthens your foundation so you can sustain what's coming. People often interpret seasons of isolation as evidence that something is wrong. But what if it's evidence that something is right? What if the silence isn't emptiness, but a signal that something sacred is unfolding? The removal of noise, people, or opportunities isn't always a loss. Sometimes it's God or life itself making space. Before you can receive something big, you need the structure to carry it, and structure is built in silence. It's also important to understand that not all isolation is physical. You can be surrounded by people and still feel set apart. You can be active and still feel unseen. That kind of isolation is often the most sacred because it's not about your proximity to others. It's about your internal shift away from what used to define you. You're being repositioned internally, and that can feel like disconnection, but you're not being cut off. You're being redirected. You're no longer who you were, and you're not yet who you're becoming. That in-between space is not punishment. It's preparation. Preparation requires patience. You don't plant a seed and expect it to bloom the next day. Isolation is the soil. It's where the seed breaks open, where roots go deep, where the foundation is built. No one sees that part. No one claps for it, but it's where the future begins. What's visible later is rooted in what happened while no one was watching. So if you find yourself in a season of isolation, don't rush through it. Don't despise it. Ask what's trying to show you, lean into it. Let it do its work. You're not being forgotten. You're being formed. When the noise fades and the audience disappears, the real work begins. And when that work is complete, you'll emerge with something unshakable: clarity, strength, and purpose. You may feel alone now, but you're not empty. You're full of potential being shaped in silence. Trust the process. The preparation is proof that something meaningful is coming. Isolation is not the absence of progress. It's the birthplace of it. There's a pattern that shows up right before a breakthrough, a surge of resistance that seems almost unbearable. You might feel mentally foggy, emotionally heavy, physically drained, or spiritually distant. Suddenly, things that once felt clear become confusing. Your energy dips, doubt creeps in. Unexpected challenges emerge out of nowhere. This is not coincidence. It's not sabotage. It's the final barrier between your current state and your next level. Resistance doesn't show up to stop you. It shows up to test you. Right before something is released in your life, whether that's an opportunity, a breakthrough, a revelation, or a personal transformation, there's usually a spike in opposition, not always from outside forces, but often from within. Your nervous system, wired to protect you from the unknown, starts to fire signals of caution. Your brain isn't trying to sabotage you. It's trying to keep you safe by keeping things familiar. But the problem is growth and safety rarely coexist in the same space. What feels threatening to the brain may actually be a signal of forward movement. This is why resistance intensifies. It's the inner friction between who you've been, you're becoming, that in-between space can feel chaotic. Old habits beg for your attention. Old mindsets try to re-attack. You find yourself wanting to retreat into comfort, to delay action, or to second-guess everything. This is not a sign to quit. It's a sign to push through. The closer you get to breakthrough, the louder resistance becomes, not because you're failing, but because you're on the verge of success. It's the same concept seen in physical training. When an athlete pushes to the edge of their endurance, their muscles start to shake. Fatigue sets in. The body tries to signal that it's time to stop, but that's the moment where growth actually begins. Strength isn't built during the easy reps. It's built when your system wants to give out and you choose to keep going. The same applies to mental and spiritual breakthroughs. The shaking isn't weakness. It's a sign that your limits are expanding. Resistance often comes dressed as everyday obstacles. You'll notice sudden delays, miscommunications, unexpected bills, emotional triggers, or even health flare-ups. It may feel like life is trying to keep you stuck, but what's really happening is that your internal system is surfacing everything that can't go with you into the next season. Before you cross into new territory, anything unresolved must be brought to the surface so it can be confronted and cleared. Resistance is revealing, not blocking. What's crucial during this time is awareness. If you don't understand the nature of resistance, you'll mislabel it as a warning to stop. You'll interpret emotional heaviness as failure or mental fog as a lack of direction. But if you understand that this is part of the process, you stop taking it personally. You learn to breathe through the tension rather than retreat from it. You recognize the resistance for what it is, a final test of alignment and endurance. This is also the stage where your character is refined. When things don't move as fast as you'd hoped, or when circumstances push you to the edge, you're given a choice: shrink back to what's comfortable or lean forward into the unknown. That decision shapes your internal wiring. Every time you move forward in the face of resistance, you build trust in yourself. You teach your mind and body that you are capable of carrying what's coming. There's also a spiritual dimension to this. Sometimes resistance intensifies because what you're about to receive carries weight. It's significant. And you need to be strengthened to steward it well. The delay, the pressure, the tension, it's all forming you into someone who doesn't just experience the breakthrough, but sustains it. Because receiving something big without the capacity to hold it only leads to self-sabotage. So the resistance is not trying to block you, it's building you. When you understand this, you stop fearing resistance, you start using it as data. You ask, what's this trying to show me? What do I need to confront, release, or reaffirm? Resistance becomes the compass that confirms you're on the right path. The more it shows up, the more you lean in. Not because it's comfortable, but because you know what's on the other side. So when the pressure builds, when the doubts get loud, when the obstacles multiply, don't retreat. Don't back down. You are closer than it feels. The release is near, and the resistance is just the final contraction before something new is born. Hold steady, stay aligned. And remember, it's darkest not just before the dawn, but right before everything changes. When people imagine major life changes or divine breakthroughs, they often picture a single dramatic moment, a big opportunity, a sudden transformation, or a miraculous event that changes everything. But real change, sustainable change, doesn't usually happen that way. It's not built in a day. It's built one decision at a time, often in the small, unnoticed corners of daily life. The truth is, the breakthrough you're praying for, the big thing that you believe is coming, won't come because of one huge leap. It will come because of countless micro decisions made consistently when no one is watching. Micro decisions are the small, seemingly insignificant choices you make throughout the day. Waking up when you plan to, even when you're tired. Choosing to stay focused on your goals instead of scrolling endlessly. Drinking water instead of another sugary drink, saying no to the shortcut and yes to the slow, disciplined process. Each of these moments seems minor on its own, but over time, they compound. These choices are the bricks that build the foundation for something big. Neuroscience supports this. Your brain is constantly wiring itself according to repetition. The choices you make, especially the ones you repeat, become automated patterns in your neural circuit. You don't just edo something repeatedly. You become someone who does that thing. Every time you make a decision aligned with who you want to be, you reinforce the identity of that person in your brain. That's how transformation happens. One small action repeated with intention. But micro decisions go beyond just habits. They speak to your alignment. When you choose integrity in a small conversation, you're not just being honest. You're becoming trustworthy. When you choose to focus for 30 minutes instead of giving in to distraction, you're not just being productive. You're telling your brain that your time matters. And when you choose to take care of your health today, you're not just improving your body. You're sending a signal that your future matters enough to protect it. These are micro decisions, but they carry macro consequences. This is especially true in seasons of waiting or transition when it feels like nothing is happening, when the big door hasn't opened yet. It's easy to believe that your small actions don't matter. But in reality, that's when they matter most. Those are the times when your future self is being built. In the waiting, you're laying track for what's coming. If you stay faithful in the small, you're not just keeping busy. You're building capacity. You're proving that you can handle more. Because you're being responsible with what's already in front of you. Spiritually speaking, this principle is woven into almost every story of transformation. Before the platform comes preparation. Before the public moment comes private discipline. And before the harvest comes sowing. Often in silence, without applause, without immediate reward. God doesn't just drop big things into your life randomly. There's a pattern. He looks at what you do with little, not because he needs proof, but because you do. Your micro decisions are training your character to match your calling. It's also important to remember that your future isn't just shaped by what you want, it's shaped by what you choose. Desire alone doesn't build destiny. Decisions do. Every time you choose to lean into discipline over comfort, you're stretching your capacity to receive. Every time you resist the urge to quit, complain, or complain, you're building mental and spiritual resilience. These don't look impressive on the outside. No one claps when you decide to go to bed early or when you spend 10 minutes in focused prayer or meditation. But these small acts are deposits. How do we? And the account they're filling is the one you'll draw from when the breakthrough arrives. So if you're wondering why it feels like nothing's moving or why the big things aren't showing up yet, check your micro decisions, not out of guilt or perfectionism, but with awareness. Ask yourself, how do we? My daily choices aligned with the future I say I want? Am I creating the environment, the discipline, and the habits that can support the weight of what I'm asking for? How do we? The big moments will come, the opportunity, the blessing, the shift, it's on the way. But whether you're ready to hold it won't be decided in that moment. It's being decided now in the quiet, repetitive, intentional decisions you make every single day. Micro decisions may seem small, but they are the seeds of greatness. What you water grows. So choose well, stay consistent, and trust that the daily becomes destiny. Gratitude's often seen as a soft emotional response, a polite reaction to something good. But in reality, it's one of the most powerful mental and spiritual tools you have access to. It doesn't just make you feel better, it changes the way your brain functions, alters your perspective, and accelerates what you're able to receive. Gratitude isn't about ignoring reality or pretending everything is perfect. It's about anchoring your mind in what is true, so your life can expand from a place of fullness rather than lack. The brain is constantly scanning your environment for threats or rewards. When you're stuck in survival mode, focused on what's missing, what's going wrong, or what hasn't happened yet, your nervous system stays in a state of contraction. That state shuts down creativity, awareness, and creates a filter of scarcity. But when you shift into gratitude, your nervous system recalibrates. The brain begins to notice what's working. Your perspective widens. You move from fear into clarity, from pressure into presence. That shift alone changes how you act, how you think, and ultimately what you attract. Gratitude doesn't just shift your emotions, it physically rewires your brain. Studies have shown that consistent gratitude practice increases activity in the prefrontal cortex, the area responsible for planning, decision-making, and emotional regulation. It also dampens activity in the amygdala, the center of fear and anxiety. So when you intentionally focus on what you're thankful for, you're not just improving your mood, you're increasing your capacity to see and respond to life with more intelligence and balance. This is why gratitude accelerates momentum. When you're grateful, you're no longer stuck in waiting mode. You stop living for the breakthrough and start living from a state of wholeness. That internal state becomes magnetic. People feel it. Opportunities align with it. And most importantly, you begin to notice what you previously overlooked. Gratitude trains your mind to recognize the seeds of progress even before they've fully grown. And when you can see the good, you're far more likely to nurture it. Spiritually, gratitude is an act of faith. It's the declaration that what you have is enough for where you are. And it's also the belief that more is coming. Gratitude doesn't mean settling. It means acknowledging that your current season is not wasted. Even in discomfort, even in delay, there's something to draw from. When you stop despising the process, you start extracting wisdom from it. That shift changes how you carry the weight. And often it shortens the weight entirely, not because time moves faster, but because you do. Gratitude also protects you. In moments of uncertainty, it shields your mind falling into despair or comparison. It pulls you out of victimhood and anchors you in purpose. It's easy to get distracted by what others have, by how far ahead someone else seems to be, or by how slow your progress feels. But gratitude grounds you. It reminds you that your journey is sacred, that your timing is unique, and that your life isn't defined by what's missing. It's defined by what you're building. What's often misunderstood is that gratitude is not passive. It's active. It takes effort to notice the good, especially in the midst of stress or chaos, but that effort builds emotional muscle. It teaches you to see beyond the surface, to extract value from every experience. Over time, this practice creates an internal ecosystem that's fertile for growth. You become someone who doesn't just survive life. You absorb it, transform through it, and expand because of it. So when you feel stuck, overwhelmed, or lost in the waiting, pause and check your posture. Not physically, but mentally. Are you focused on what you lack or on what's available? Are you aware of how far you've come, or are you only focused on how far you still have to go? Gratitude is not denial of difficulty. It's a decision to find strength in the difficulty. And when you do, you create momentum, not by pushing harder, but by aligning more deeply. This alignment is what makes gratitude such a powerful accelerator. It puts your internal state in sync with the reality you're trying to build. It allows you to hold peace now, rather than waiting for peace to arrive with external change. And when you carry peace into your next level, you're far more capable of sustaining what you receive. Gratitude isn't just a response to blessings. It's a catalyst for them. The more you appreciate, the more aware you become. And the more aware you are, the more equipped you are to walk into what's next. Not anxiously, but ready, because you've already been practicing abundance. You've already been seeing clearly. And now you're not just hoping for something big. You're already living like it's on the way.